Hello everybody and welcome to NorCal Slot Car Scene. Today's video is a little bit different than the ones we've done in the past in that it's designed for our NorCal racers, and the first episode is about tire selection for the tracks that we run on. So a lot of it will be pertinent only to Northern California, but the principles will be good for everybody.
Welcome everybody. This is Jim Rose with NorCal Slot Car, whatever we want to call it. My YouTube channel is NorCal Slot Car Scene. Our website that Ian's put together is NorCal Slot Car, and that kind of encompasses HO and 30-second scale. And so we've got a lot of new people, and we're trying to get everybody up to speed. So that's kind of why we did this one on tires, because tires is probably 2/3 of making a slot car handle, whether it's an HO car or a 30-second scale car or 24 scale car. Rudy's back. There we go. So I put together a pretty short presentation on my take on tires, because I've been doing this for a while now and had some pretty good success. And so obviously, virtually everything I say is opinion. There'll be a few things that are just facts. But Rudy, are you lost?
Yeah, I tried to log in while I was walking. I was walking with my wife, and I tried to log in with my cell phone, and I couldn't hear anything.
I thought maybe you heard that this was a 24 scale thing.
No, I was walking. Jerry told me you guys were meeting, and also I said, hey, I would like to see your stuff. And then I was walking down with my wife and tried to log in. I could see you guys, but I couldn't hear, or I don't know if you guys can see me.
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and start the presentation.
Yeah.
This is about is tires, and tires for 30-second scale are totally different than tires for 24 scale because they're rubber. And so that introduces a whole new ballgame. Principles are still the same. You want a tire that grips and doesn't grip too much. And that's one of the issues we're having at a couple of the tracks now that are spray glued. We have too much grip. Okay, so NorCal Slot Car, this is the new website that Ian's put together. And it's a little bit of a work in progress. I mean, it's up and running. There's some things that aren't complete. If you go to some of the tracks, there's some dummy copy that's just there as a placeholder right now. But race results are up. There's some setup sheets are up and so on. So that's a brand new website. Hopefully all the track owners will, I mean, you don't have to go along with what we're doing, and you can have your own rules, which obviously everybody does, but at least be like kind of a clearinghouse. So, if track A wants to have an event on the 15th, he can go and look in there and see who's on the 15th already. And if it's somebody that it's not a big deal conflict, go ahead and schedule it. If it is, maybe they'll consider moving it if there's people that may want to go to both events. So it's just kind of a clearinghouse. It's not you got to do this kind of thing. So it's just an informative thing. Tire compounds, and specifically for the tracks we run on and the type of cars that we run. So you see in the background there, Justin Colvin. If you're not familiar with Justin, he works at Fast Track Hobbies. Just finished 5th in one class and 4th in another class at the World Championships in Latvia with about 100 entries. He's raced with us a couple of times at some of the tracks. So it's good to have him, even though you can't see him, but that's him in the background. He'll be there kind of running the event at Fast Tracks on Sunday. There's not a whole lot to it for tires for 30-second scale. And this is kind of the go-to. This is the NSR website, and it's showing all the different sizes. So it looks a little intimidating, but they're just various sizes here on the left. You see the overall diameter and the width, and it will tell you what size wheels they fit. And in terms of the racing we do, this is probably 98% of the tires being run are either super grips or ultra grips. And of that, probably almost all of them are super grips. The NSR super grip tire has always been the go-to tire for scale racing and 30-second scale. There's a few people that are running ultra grips, and when we were down in LA at the Slotted Nationals on a non-spray glued track, we ran ultra grip tires because the new compounds have just a little bit more bite with the ultra grips. The older compound, the non-Evo, and you see here it says Evo on some of these and non-Evo on some. Evo is the new compound, and it's been maligned a lot on the internet. People think it's not as good as the original. The stuff that's coming out, and I was one of those people, whether they changed the compound a little bit and didn't tell us, or we've just figured out how to true them and make them work, they're working fine. So the Evo tires seem to work fine. Just as good as the old non-Evo tires that a lot of people hoarded because this new stuff isn't any good. So we had people hoarding the non-Evo tires. The go-to size for most of the cars that we race is the 5206. That's the tire that's probably on most of the cars. That's the right size for the slotted wheels. It's the right size for the NSR wheels. The 5206 is the Super Grip. 5207 is the Ultra Grip, same size. So that is probably the go-to tire. Now, that being said, we're struggling with Motown and Fast Tracks trying to find a tire a little less grippy. And so we're working on that. I'll talk about that in just a second. NSR does make ready-to-run tires. And so if you don't want to deal with mounting them, you're still going to have to true them because they're too big. You won't get the performance out of them if you don't true them. But they do make ready-to-run tires. They work extremely well on the F1 cars. The NSR F1 tires and wheels mounted works extremely well. And that's actually what we ran down on Electric Dreams on the Group C cars, but we don't allow that up here. And that's one of the reasons the Jaguar was so dominant, because it was the only Group C car that allowed you to run 13 millimeter wide tires on it.
Are these polyurethane material or what kind
No,
of
these
material?
I guess they're called true rubber as opposed to
Natural rubber?
I'm not sure what kind of rubber it is because there's all different compounds.
It could be synthetic rubber.
I would think it is because there's three kinds of tires for 30-second scale. Silicone, which is a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
Rubber, which we just call these generic rubber, and urethane, which is different.
Yeah.
And so all clubs in the country, and there's a few that run on foam, but not very many. So those are the 3 to 4 choices you have for tires. Slotted makes tires, but if you can figure out this chart, let me know. They do make some really good compound tires, and the compounds in that right below where the tires are, you see in the bold where it says Z1, S2, C1, and so forth. The Fs are silicone, so we don't even worry about those. The others, who knows what they are. The ones that work pretty well is the N22 compound. And that compound works pretty well. It's a little bit less grip, in my opinion, than the Super Grips, but it's a good tire to have on hand, possibly. But without going to all the trouble of, there's P3, P6, P4, S2, C1, C2, and there's just so many in different sizes. We've tried to take a little of the guesswork out of it. I found out through testing, finding a tire that works on these spray glue tracks. And what we came up with is in Group C, we use the stock wheels. And the tire that comes with the car, the ones in the box that have the Goodyear or Michelin or whatever logo on them, work really well at these spray glue tracks. They don't have a lot of traction, but the cars don't bog. If you've run at Motown or at Fast Tracks, it's almost like running on flypaper because these cars don't have enough power to pull through them. And it's just too much grip. So this, if you already have them, or if you've thrown them out, you can buy them as a replacement. It's PT1167C1. You see there, that's the part number for the stock rubber that comes on the slotted cars. The slotted cars also come in for the Group C anyway, because those are the two classes we're running in the NSR. The Group C wheels come in 2 different sizes. The Jaguar, which you see here, and this is off their website, so you can go in and look at all the parts that are stock on the car. The Jaguar comes with a 15.8 millimeter diameter wheel, and it's a slightly smaller wheel than most of the Group C cars. When they started Group C 10 years ago or whatever it was, they all came with that size wheel. They went to a little bit bigger wheel, and now in some of the cars, they've gone back to a smaller wheel. So you can choose the wheel diameter to add or subtract grip as well, because you'll have a little bit more rubber on the track. But Mike Andrews, who just joined us a couple seconds ago, he's found out that the air wheels, which I'll talk about in just a second, but the air wheels seem to cut through the glue as well with standard rubber. So there's a good chance we may go to that in the future and make it even easier for you to get the Group C cars to hook up. So if you look at the wheels, now this is the 13 millimeter on the top. So those are Formula One wheels, but you see the one on the very top left is a non-air wheel, and the one in the middle is, they call it air system. And so it's got a channel in it that's not filled up with anything but air when you mount the tire. And that tire wheel combination, the air wheels, develop more side grip. And they are typically used anywhere that they're allowed. In our Group C, we don't allow them. We're running the stock wheels, and that's why I say we might change it to a spec size Group C wheel, and hopefully that makes it easier for everybody. So those are the two differences in wheels. The Formula One cars come with those air wheels. The non-air wheels are optional, and in a couple different sizes. They're both 13 millimeter diameter, but they come in 10 millimeter and 13 millimeter width. So that's a little bit of how the tires work and so on. So that's the tires themselves. Now, the biggest issue though is preparing the tires. And I bought one of the cheap, wouldn't say cheap, $100, one of the knockoff Hootie tire truers, and ended up selling it and buying a Hootie. I just think it's worth the money. If you're going to invest the money in it, it's worth the money. That dial indicator is an optional thing now that's sold through Electric Dreams. That frame with a dial indicator doesn't make it any better. It just makes it a little bit easier to find the right size and get the consistency. So that's not something that's necessarily that you have to have. It just makes life easier, not better. And truing tires, it's just patience. It takes a long time to true tires. If you try to make it shorter, you'll ruin the tire, or you'll make the tire worse. If you try to speed the process up with a faster voltage on your tire truer, you'll get a depression in your tire when it settles. The inside is that convex or concave. It just won't be flat anymore if you spin them too fast. So this is it's not a magic formula, but this is my formula for truing tires. 3.5 volts. Truing size. It takes Formula One tire are about 19 millimeters when I get them. When you mount them. And we're truing them down to about 17.5-ish. So it takes a while to take 1.5 millimeters off these tires at 3.5 volts. And then around the sidewall, I use an emery board, and be very careful with this because you can chew up the tire if you try to do this too fast. Just a very light touch on an emery board. And then I finish them up by polishing the tire with lighter fluid. So I just take a handkerchief or a towel, a shop towel, dip it in lighter fluid, and I'm not trying to true it anymore. I'm just polishing it with lighter fluid, and I do that 4 or 5 times. When you dip your finger in the lighter fluid with a towel, put it on, it'll spin just like it's on a bearing, and then eventually it'll start to dry out, and you'll feel the resistance. When I feel resistance, I put some more lighter fluid on it, and I do that 3 or 4 times, and that polishes the tire. And what you're looking for, or what works for me anyway, is you see that's a Formula One tire on the right. The one on the left it's the same, it's just dirty. But you're trying to get a surface on that tire that makes the tire look like it's a silicone tire. Shiny and smooth. With a handkerchief wrapped around your finger, dipped in lighter fluid, you can get that really nice polished effect. Now, some people actually do lighter fluid while they're truing. And I tend to polish maybe the last 2 or 3 cuts and then go over it again, polishing it afterwards. They stick really good on these non-spray glue tracks. So that's kind of all there is to tire truing and some of the compounds. It's not rocket science, but it does take some time to do. And it depends on the tire. I will still oil them, and with that attachment you can get that what you saw with the dial indicator, you take the dial indicator out, you can put 2 tires together and run them in oil for as long as you want, pressed against each other. And that's what we used to do. And I'm not doing that as much as doing the polishing, especially I think with these new compound tires that we found out that the 24 hours spitting them against each other is less effective than just polishing them in lighter fluid. Once you get them done and polished, then when you go to the track, I oil them with NSR oil, 3-in-1 oil, whatever oil of choice. Put just a small dab, wipe it so it's not wet. You're not getting the track dirty or get the track wet. And then run about 20 laps. Come back in, do a second application and run about 20 laps. And then the tires seem to be just about perfect and they're ready to race. And so it seems like it's easier than it used to be using that method. So that's what I do. And it worked great down on Electric Dreams. And so most everybody that was running up in the A and the B main or the semis pretty much did the same thing. It seems to work very well. So that's pretty much all the secrets about tire truing. I don't want to talk about this right now because I want to entertain any questions if there are, but we're thinking about adding a class to the the commercial tracks to Motown and to fast tracks. And these are two of the possibilities. Those are a couple of the options that we have available that I'm thinking about. And that's it for me. If anybody has any questions, let's go. Let's talk about the tire situation.
Yeah.
So we got Mike was the first to raise his hand. So Mike, why don't you go ahead and ask or comment, because Mike's one of our track owners. Yeah, not everybody knows everybody just yet. I don't think, because it's kind of a small group. We've got some new people. We've got Jerry. Rudy is, if you're not familiar with Rudy, Rudy is the proprietor, owner / whatever of Slick 7, which is a big company in 24 scale racing. So I'm assuming Rudy's going to get into this, build a track, stay in California, and we'll have him too.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Mike.
You got to talk to my wife about that.
Well, that can be done. That can be done. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Mike.
about 10 years ago, I was messing with tires for these cars, and I actually have a Teflon die to make about 15 tires at a time, and I was making them out of polyurethane. But I never followed up with that. But I was looking into doing something like that. That's why I was asking what kind of material you guys were using.
I don't know. Maybe somebody on here knows, but I'll find out.
Yeah, and I don't know if the tires that they make are the or what do you call it? They're not cast, or I don't know if they're cast or if they're.
I don't think so, because there is a seam in them.
Yeah, so they're probably what do you call it? When they process rubber, vulcanized. Maybe they're vulcanized.
Oh,
that means what you mean. You need uncured rubber and a mold, and then you have to cure it with heat. And I've designed molds like that before, so I know how they work. But
okay, I'll definitely find out.
Yeah.
That brings up another point that I didn't talk about. There is how you actually do mount these, and what I use is was it 91% alcohol, just to clean any release agent off the wheel and the tire, just get them clean. And then I use Gorilla Glue, Gorilla Super Glue. Gorilla Super Glue has a rubbering agent in it. It's not that really brittle super glue like a lot of them are. So it's tire glue for RC cars has that rubbering agent in it. Mm-hmm. So, but the Gorilla Glue is easy to find anywhere. So that's what I use to mount the tires. So we'll come back to Mike. We'll figure that. Let's go to Jim.
All right.
I was curious what grit sandpaper you found works best for the side truing of the tires, because they really want to chunk up.
They do, and I just use an emery board and virtually no pressure. And then when I polish them with a lighter fluid, lighter fluid on a handkerchief kind of acts like a little sanding. It's got a little abrasive in it, and I can take a lot of those chunks off, and it as long as I don't get too big of a chunk. So just go very lightly on that. If I was doing it with sandpaper, I'd probably use like 1600 grit.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, I use 2000 wet dry and dip it in water, and then go ahead and do a radius on the edge, and it seems to work pretty well. But take your time, very light pressure, and be patient. But that's 2000 wet dry.
The NSR tires just are so bad. It's like one side's pretty flat and the other side's got a big dip in it.
Well, when we true them down to, we're truing from 19 millimeters down to 17.5, they're all flat on the corners. We have to, once you get them that small, that radius that's built into it's gone anyway. So you definitely still have to do it most of the time.
Yeah, you got to cut a lot of it off just to get them around. Geez, they're pretty bad. I get the 5209s for my track because it doesn't have any glue on it. And you've got to cut them down so much that's why I go with the 5209.
Yeah, that's what we found at Electric Dreams too. We were typically running these at a semi-normal ride height, like 40 thousandths.
Yeah.
And Electric Dreams, that race down there, because there is no limit, we were running about 20 thousandths ground clearance. So these cars were just slammed right on the ground. Yeah. And they were.
How long did it last at that clearance?
Is that you, Randy? I didn't.
Yeah, how long did the car go I mean, how many laps or hours or whatever will it maintain that and still keep a clearance? Because
I'm
the
not going to,
124 scale stuff, tires go away pretty quickly.
but 24 scale running on foam and the rubber, we didn't have any problem. I mean, we slammed those cars to 20,000s and we put about at least 2 or 3 hours on them in practice in the race and never
Okay.
had an issue. And so I'm not going to say it's not an issue, but it's not really an issue. Now, when we start running, because we're running inline cars, the inline cars, the gears are above the chassis. So we're not, even if it's a little low, it's not an issue where it's going to damage the track. When we start running sidewinder or angle winder cars, we may have to start thinking about that, and because the gears sit below the level of the chassis. So, but right now we haven't had a problem with it because the cars we're running are inline, and once they clear, they don't seem to have an issue for quite a while.
Okay.
I noticed a lot of coning on the F1 cars. The tires are just turning into a cone shape. Not after that many laps.
Which I haven't run into that. Which compound?
It's whatever the NSR comes with, the Formula One
Stock tires?
Yeah, the stock
Those are super
tires.
good.
They just start coning, start wearing on the outer edge. You can see the taper all the way across.
I'm
But you've
wondering.
got kind of a unique track too, Gary. You know, it's a high-speed track. You're
It
slim
is.
around the corners, so I
Yeah,
imagine you'll wear pretty quickly there.
Well,
yeah,
we see that at months as well, though.
Really?
yeah. I've
Yeah, and
taken them
actually,
off and
that's one
re-queued
of the
them just to get
questions that I
flat.
wanted to actually discuss. The first question I had was back to when you're truing tires, you're running, you said 3.5 volts and stuff like that. What depth of cuts do you typically take?
On that dial indicator, the markings are 1/1000th of an inch. And so that's why the dial indicator to me is a little bit easier than trying to feel it. So I'm going at about 1/1000th of an inch at a time.
Wow. Mhm.
Which
That's
is
a lot of
2,000.
Yeah,
That's radius. So that's
yeah.
2,000s on diameter.
My second question, which kind of segues into what either Jerry or Gary asked, I'm not sure which one of those guys it was, but I too have seen that the tires over multiple runs or multiple races or whatever, it starts picking up imperfections. And in fact, on the F1 cars, I have noticed that they do kind of start taking on a cone shape where the outside of the tire seems to have a smaller diameter than the inside area of contact with the tire. You get the polished effect and the whole bit, and the radius and stuff looks fine, but the tire is no longer cylindrical, and I oftentimes, after a race or two, I pull my tires off and try and true them just slightly, taking a couple of thousandths off. And I have found the tires that have been oiled tend to basically rip apart. This is back to the Evo thing, right? Where when you're trying to true the tires, they chunk instead of truing. So maybe that's a lot of stuff there, but I'll just throw that out and let people.
Let me answer the last part first.
Just-
I have run into that when I've got a set of tires that have been well run, and I try to retrue them. Sometimes they're so sticky it'll grab on the drum and they'll just rip apart. So
Right.
I think the answer to that probably is, if you're going to do that and retrue tires that have already been treated so they're real sticky, is either probably use water to wet sand them. And I don't know if that'll work because I've never really done it, but I would think, something like that might help if you're going to retrue tires that have already been treated or run in. So that might be a possibility. I haven't run into the coning issue at all. I'm not sure if that's because I'm running the tires down so small to start with. One possible answer, though, is the Formula One tires that come with a car are 10 millimeters wide. And so the rubber sticks out 1.5 millimeters outside of the tire. So if the tire starts to roll a little bit, it's not going to have any support on the outside. So that might be where that's coming from. One of the aftermarket tires, aftermarket wheels is a full 13 millimeters wide. So the rubber is supported all the way across the surface, the contact patch. So going to that different wheel that's 13 by 13 instead of 13 by 10 could help that. And I don't know, but I'm just kind of speculating.
Did we ever find Mike? Just, I'm kind of wondering if he might have some answers to this.
Yeah, he was there. Is he still here?
There he
Yeah,
is.
we can hear you now.
Any comments or suggestions or on that specific topic?
You guys are so out to lunch on your tire touring. It's unbelievable. Okay, tire touring. It's very simple. I use typically 180 grit, maybe 220 grit on the Area 3 tire truer. And whatever comes on, I've got a hold of one of those Hootie tire truers. Whatever grit's on that drum is fine. You just got to go slow at 3 volts. Take your time. If you're balling them up and tearing them, you're probably going too fast with too much pressure. So you have to back off on the pressure and go slow. I usually don't have to use any lubricant. A lot of people are just using water. I wouldn't use lighter fluid to grind with. I would use water or isopropyl. That would be your best bet. And then going with the radiuses on the edge, that's very easy to do. I've found out how to do that quite easily now. You start off at probably about 6 volts. Start your radius on both sides at 6 volts, and then you got to switch it in reverse and reverse the whole thing, and then keep radiusing it again. So you're like going one way, and then you're going back the other way. I also use that trick when I'm truing the tire, because it seems to get a better overall roundness in the tire. To reverse it and true it, finish it going in reverse. If you just about down to the finish, you see you got no more high spots, or you just about got all the low spots out of it, I should say. Put it in reverse and then true it in reverse. It just does something with the tire, gets it nice and round. And then work on your radiuses. And then to finish your radius, and this is very, very tricky, I found this when I was in New Zealand, is to get some turpentine on a rag, like Jim's doing with his lighter fluid. But if you use a little bit of turpentine, very small amount, this stuff is super aggressive. It'll melt the tire if you're not careful what you're doing. But what it does, it actually melts the corner and it puts a nice radius on it. But again, you got to be very, very careful with turpentine on these rubber tires, because it'll just dissolve them. So I'm actually been using a Q-tip and putting the radius on with a Q-tip, a little bit of turpentine, and then make sure you get it off your fingers before you pick up your car, because it'll melt the paint and the decals on your car. So after you've done your tires, just the radiuses, and then you could wipe them down with a bit of lighter fluid to get it off, but get the stuff off your hands before you pick up your car, because you'll melt fingerprints onto your car and you'll be horrified at the result.
Life.
But the turpentine will smooth that radius out, take all the chunks out, and just make it nice and round. As for treating tires, those Evo tires are so soft, I barely even treat them, probably 5 minutes tops, with a bit of the 226 running on, either together or running them on some foam tires from a 124th car, set up in an old chassis, and I just run the 226 like that.
Mike, explain what 226 is.
I'll go get it. Here it is, CRC 226. This can's lasted me 5 years so far. It's about half empty right now. It is available at Home Depot in the electrical section. Just download the app on their phone, and it'll tell you which aisle it is and where it's located. as you
It's in,
probably
it's
know.
in the slot car section at Home Depot.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
where you'll find it. Yeah, the electrical slot car section. These new Evo tires are very soft already. They're more like an ultra grip, so they don't need much treatment, I don't think. But I've been running the Thunder Slot tires, and I haven't been treating them much at all either. So that's about where I'm at on tires, you know.
Yeah,
You're running stock Thunder Slot tires on your Thunder Slots, Mike's what you're saying?
Yeah, the ones that come with the cars, the ones with the treated ones, or you can get slicks as well. I don't have the number in front of me, but the tires that come with the Thunder Slot are fine. You just true them up. I don't think the slicks are any softer personally.
if you're not familiar with the backstory to Thunder Slot, the guy that owns or started Thunder Slot used to work for NSR. And it's kind of like a Lamborghini Ferrari kind of thing. For whatever reason, he left NSR and started his own company. So a lot of that's why you see a lot of similarities between NSR and Thunder Slot.
Interesting. All right. So, and the stock
Yeah.
tires for the Thunder Slots on like at Motown and places where they spray glue, you change the compound, say compared to your track, Michael, which is not sprayed, and Gary's isn't sprayed either. So compound would work for both types of tracks.
Same tire. I'm not having any of this bogging down problems that you guys are having with my tires. I don't know why you guys are having such an issue with tires. You just got to learn how to drive the cars with the grip you've provided, you know, and it's just finger brain coordination thing. It's not that hard. You guys use choke, I don't use to, man. But I don't have any. The grip seems pretty consistent at all these 124th tracks I go to. I don't have more grip on one lane, less grip on another lane. Sometimes the grip will go away during a race, but that's just dirty tires, I think. And you got to keep your front tires clean, because if they pick up all that crap on the track, then the front starts gripping and it flips the whole car out. So you got to be aware that there's buildup on your front tires from running these 124th tracks and clean them off, because the front tires will lose their zero grip and they'll start biting, and then that'll start throwing your car off too. So, you know, just check up or build up on the front tires, you know, clean them with a bit of lighter fluid, get all that black crap off them, recoat them if you got to recoat them. You know, it's like you got to check all that stuff before you go anywhere, you know, because you'll be surprised at the buildup you'll get on the fronts. And then once the fronts start biting, then it starts throwing the whole car out, you know, and you'll be scratching your head all day long. That's my tip of the day.
Sounds good, Mike. Definitely a little, I mean, not really different, but there's more than one way to do it right and make it work. And I don't
Yeah.
you know, I know Mike likes the CRC. I've stuck with the NSR oil, so they both work. So it's whatever works for you.
But the rules are you can't modify the front tires or different coating or materials?
You can coat the front tires with your coating of choice, whether it's nail polish or super glue or whatever. So you're allowed to do that. Unless
Okay.
you go to Southern California, you're not allowed to do it down there. So it's like any of the other slot cars type of racing. There's local rules. So Northern California, it's fine to coat tires.
But they have to be the stock material, the stock tire.
Yeah, they still have to be rubber tires, but they can be coated with a slick material. And NSR and Slotted both make tires called zero grip. And they're not zero grip, but they're less grip than the rear tires.
Mhm.
If you coat them with nail polish or super glue, then they're virtually no grip. They're real slippery. So you see that a lot in people in Northern California doing that. And again, the nail polish you get at Target or Walmart in the slot car section.
Get some with glitter in it. It looks really nice.
Yeah, good.
Mario, you've had your hand up for a while.
Quick question. I know everyone's talking about the tire truer and the hoodie. This has been very difficult to find. I've looked around, and obviously Electric Dreams has it, but they want like $350 for it, in that range. Do you guys know of anywhere else that could possibly pick it up for around the $250 mark?
Let me answer that real quick. The price went up about 6 months ago. And so the price at Electric Dreams was like $250. And then when I went to buy one, it was like 340 or whatever it is down there. Like, it's just a price increase from Hootie. So I just shopped around on the internet, and I actually bought mine at Fast Track Hobbies for 260. But they had old stock. I think and you see that at Professor Motor too. They had the price at 240, but they were out of stock. And when the stock came in, it was over 300. So if you can find one, PCH, what's it called? Slot Car, Pacific Coast Hobbies Slot Cars. I think they still
That's it.
have some at the old price.
Okay.
So that's the issue. It's not so much that Professor Motor or Electric Dreams is trying to, raise prices. The prices were raised to them on that item. So when they got new stock, and the price went up about 25%.
Anyone here not using their hoodie anymore? They want to sell it?
There are
Not
quite
after
a
that,
few,
Mario.
there are quite a few
checked on-
knockoffs out there.
Have you checked on eBay? We checked on eBay?
They're pretty much few and far between on eBay. Find a used one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to find one on eBay. I've looked around. I just got to keep hunting for one. So
What you need to do is find a friend of yours that doesn't race anymore, that has one, and borrow it from them.
Don't return it.
And don't invite them back into the sport. That's what I did, because I had Mike O'Donnell's hoodie for probably 5 years at least. And I go, Mike, he starts racing again. I go, you know where your tire truer is? Yeah, it's at my house.
yeah,
I give it back to him. So that's why I ended up, and I bought one of the knockoffs.
that's a good idea. I might have to try a bunch of people that used to race at a Sidewinder
There
Raceway.
you go. There you go. I
Yeah,
bought
and
one of the
one thing
knockoffs.
to know, Mario, is that there is another Hootie Truer that's cheaper. It is not the same one that we need. So you got to be sure that it's the Slot Car tire truer and not like the Mini Z tire truer.
Yeah, I've read about it, and I've made sure
Okay.
that it's going to come with the 332 scale axle on there. So
Yeah,
Yeah, if we
perfect.
start
Okay.
running revel slots are 3mm axles, but the axle that's in the Hootie Truer is 3mm, and the adapters are going down, so that's not a problem. There are knockoffs out there. Electric Dreams has one for $189. It looks similar to a Hootie.
yeah,
I bought one. I now have a Hootie.
Yeah.
Enough said. So that was the most expensive cheap tire truer, and it's not that it did a bad job, but I just think the Hootie is just you get what you pay for.
right.
And then I have got the dial indicator on mine, which that does not fit on those other knockoffs because they're knockoffs and they build these accessories for the standard.
Right.
So there's nothing wrong with that other one. And if it's a money issue, it's definitely better than well, obviously nothing. And if you're doing Scale Electrics tires, you're going to need one of the other ones, the slide style, that you can mount the whole axle assembly. So that's a whole different issue.
Yeah, and I have one of those. I got the Professor Motor one with the slide, so it's fine. But I just want to get a little bit more detailed on these tires that everyone else is using. I just want to bring up my game a little bit.
And in my opinion, the slide ones, like whatever the brands are, like the Tire Razor, those type, I personally think the Hootie does a better job. That doesn't mean you can't use one and use it and get good results, because obviously Mike is doing it because he's going real fast. But
Yeah.
I personally, I bought one, so
Right.
that tells you how I feel about it.
Okay.
I have both of them. I use the Professor Motor for the Carrera electric stuff because you have to.
Yeah.
You can get good results with that, but for the other stuff, the Hootie just works better.
Yeah.
It's easier to get the good results.
Yeah.
Especially when you're doing it at 1/1000 of an inch at a time, and you just crank that in. You're trying to go like this, and there are people that make reciprocating machines that will do that automatically for you. One real quick comment too, back to that 1/1000 of an inch thing. What works for me on the Hootie or any truer that's like that, I had a power supply that had an amp meter on it. And what I would do is I would turn it in, and you could hear it cutting, and my tire truer would pull about 2 amps. When it went up to about 2.5, that's when I quit turning the screw in. When it dropped down to about 2, I turned it in more. And now I can hear it. I've done it so many times, I can actually hear that. But that's kind of how I started. I turned it in until I went to about 5 amp, 5/10 of an amp draw over normal.
Mm-hmm.
Let it true, it'll come down, and then do the same thing. it turns out that with a dial that a thousandth of an inch is just perfect. So a thousandth of an inch at a time, which is a pain in the butt, but works.
Question for you. You know those first charts, Jim, that you showed, where did those charts come from?
Those are all on the Slotted and NSR respectively websites. They have online catalogs, and those are just screen grabs out of their online catalogs.
All right.
Mike, you got something else?
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever seen the NSR made a tire truer. They don't make it anymore for whatever reason. So that one there, I saw one in operation in New Zealand, and that just makes a killer job of tires. But for some reason, NSR aren't making it anymore, which is unfortunate. And my friend had another one that was made in Argentina or somewhere, Brazil, I'm not sure. And that has a rotating disc, and the tire rotates against that disc. Unfortunately, I didn't take a picture of it, but it's very similar to the NSR tire truer that was out about 5-6 years ago.
It's similar to the Hootie, but it's a disc, a rotating disc instead of a rotating drum.
Yeah, it has an actual disc about an inch and a half in diameter that rotates. I don't know if anyone's seen that one.
I've seen that one, and the disc deal is a problem because the velocity is different depending upon where the rubber is making contact with the disc. So I would suggest doing that.
Yeah, until you see it, you won't believe it. That's all.
I've seen it.
Unfortunately, no longer available.
Yeah.
I think they were quite expensive though, weren't they? Weren't they like $400 back then?
I believe they were very expensive. Yeah, like you're saying, they're very expensive. I got lucky on eBay. I found a Hootie for $200 2 weeks ago.
Put the hand up again.
I was watching it online, and then the guy gave me an offer. He says, "Oh, you want to buy this for $200?" I went, "Sold, baby. Send it to me."
You didn't send it to Mario?
No, right after I bought the TWP one, the knockoff, the Hootie showed up online. I went, "Damn."
Did you buy that TWP from me on eBay?
That's the way it happens, though. You buy one, and no, I bought it from the guy down in Ventura. What's his name?
Oh, PCH?
124th guy. PCH, yeah.
Jerry?
I had a question for Michael. Michael, you were talking about reversing the direction when you're doing the sidewall truing on the tires. Do you also finish the tire when you do the finish cut and reverse?
Yeah, I do some reverse. Just about get it all the low spots going one way, and then I'll finish it in reverse. Yeah. Just switching the leads over on the tire true.
I haven't tried that.
I picked up on my last trip.
Sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, I just picked it up while I was down in New Zealand, and it seems to give you a really even round tire,
Nice.
So you can put it in R for racing and drive around the track backwards and go just as fast. But yeah, I want to iterate again using the turpentine. Be really careful, because that is a super tire softener. I tried it on some old careful with that turps.
Yeah.
So hopefully that gives you some ideas of what we're doing with tires and what sort of works. Tires are, pardon the pun, tires are a black art. And it's one of those things where you can do two tires exactly the same and they don't work the same on the car. We're getting better at it. And so we're learning, and we're still learning on these spray glue tracks. So we're learning every day. What we've learned in the last 6 months, though, is get these cars as low as possible, because we were treating these, and this is again my opinion, we were treating these like 32nd scale cars. They run good, fine. Go down to Electric Dreams, and Andrea from NSR shows us that, wow, this is basically a mini 24 scale car. It's on the ground, and it just upped the game. And last year at Electric Dreams, when I went down and Mike went down, and Mike and I and a couple other guys just totally dominated the race. And we were running in the 6.5, 6.6 range with the Group C cars. And last month at the Nationals, we were running in the 6.0, 6.1 range. And that's all the advancements. Part of it was the Jaguar. That had very little to do with it, in my opinion, but it did have something. But
So,
the
right,
advancements in tires, the advancements in getting these cars low and running without weight. We're running with very little weight in these cars now, where we used to start piling on weight. And so that's advanced, from December to July, half a second a lap. And so that's just us collectively as a community of 32nd scale racers learning how to build these cars better. And we kind of showed them how they could be when we went down there in December and dominated the enduro. And then they started to catch up, and now they're right there with us, or in surpassing us in a lot of cases. But we've all learned how to make the cars go faster, and I think that's good for everybody. They're also easier to drive, so I think that's good for everybody. So that's kind of where we wanted to go with this chat. I'm going to turn the recording off because there's other things we want to talk about, but it's more pertinent just to us in Northern California.
So thanks for watching NorCal Slot Car Scene. This was our first Zoom chat for our Northern California group. If you're not in Northern California, I hope you got some tips out of what we talked about in terms of tire compounds and preparing tires, and hope to see you next time. We'll have a different topic, and thanks for watching. This is Jim Rose with NorCal Slot Car Scene.